Okay, here we are in the project. In the first board, notice we have 3 columns: to do, in progress, and done. And we can click on the backlog here in the left-hand menu, and immediately we can start writing some backlog items, some tasks, some stories, or some bugs. And just like the little tutorial we had at the start, this is where you can very quickly start writing in some of the tasks, as well as user stories. So I'm going to start with a user story. This user story will be to build wireframes to show the user interface of the app. So it's a planning user story, basically, to create the wireframes to plan out how the user interface is going to look for our app. And when you actually enter that in and you click on it, you'll notice that you get a pop-up window in the right-hand side. And the right-hand side is where you're going to get your detail about that particular work item, whether it's a bug or a task or an issue or a story. And because this is a user story, I'm just going to paste in one that I did earlier. And notice that I've used some as-is. So as a user interface designer, I want to, so that I, and then as a researcher, I want to, so that I can, and as a developer, I want to, so that I can. And setting out that framework for the user stories to have the as a, who you are, what you want, so that you can do what with it, really helps to write out the story from that user's perspective and what they need to get from that work item. The definition of a user story is a tool in agile software development to capture a description of a software feature from a user's perspective. So the user story describes to the user what they want and why. Please be aware though, if you are taking the PSPO certification from scrum.org, notice it doesn't mention user stories in the Scrum guide. That's because user stories are not a fundamental part of Scrum. They're a useful tool, but they're not a fundamental part of Scrum. So what you'll notice if you go for the assessment, you will get questions with answers that mention user stories. If you see that, you can be pretty sure that it's an incorrect answer. So don't get that confused. If you see user stories in the certification assessment, you can be fairly sure that they're not actually testing your knowledge on that. It's not actually part of the fundamentals of Scrum. However, we're including it here because it is very useful and a lot of companies and organizations like to use them. Okay, so let's go over to create a new issue. And let's change it to a task. And let's make that task to get user feedback. And we'll add in a description. So this time we'll just put in a basic description for now. And we'll put some expected output. For now, we'll just make that bold so it stands out, and we will keep it simple. Now let's start adding some labels in. So let's give it a label of user feedback. This is our way of being able to categorize the different work items. In fact, let's change that to design. And let's add a label for the previous user story, and we'll give that a label of design as well. So we now have the wireframe build and the user feedback under the same label of design.